Good morning and welcome to the new edition of my live comments. The Liberal government has introduced a new bill in Canada called C-76. This is a bill, and it's a major bill, which is almost an omnibus bill. And this bill aims at undercutting all other political parties, favor liberalism. As a matter of fact, this wide-ranging bill changes all rules, the rules for privacy, for campaigning, for advertising, not only for the political parties, but also for all others. Can you believe that it has created a pre-writ period during which spending limit will push the parties to start running political campaigns and ads much before the campaign officially begins? That means they'll need more money, and that means that they will not only collect funds, but also might try to manipulate funds. This will scrap the rising cap on spending by the political parties during long campaign. So there'll be no cap. And then, this could limit how the opposition conservatives can campaign on long-held fundraising advantage for the next year election. Nobody denies that the conservatives have the maximum money. They have been mobilizing the resources, but now whatever they spend during the pre-writ time would also be part of the election expenses. And that is undercut. Now this election, what they call it, the Election Modernization Act, it will establish a spending limit for at least 2 months before a federal election. And that would push the parties flush with cash to start running much earlier than the past. This will repeal a legal change which the previous Harper government had brought to increase the limit on what parties can spend during an election period. For each day, the former election period runs beyond 37 days. It will limit the campaign to 50 days maximum, and party spending cap would be the same for the election period of any length of time. Usually, the campaigns run for 45 days long and must span at least 36 days. If you remember, 2015 campaign, when Mr. Trudeau came into power, ran for 78 days after the former Prime Minister had dissolved the parliament at the beginning of the August. Under the election fighting cap formula brought in by Harper, all parties were allowed to spend up to $54 million during that campaign. The spending by the Conservative was shy of 42 million, and 17 million they spent on radio and TV advertising, more than any other party. And the Liberals actually spent much more, 43.1 million. However, the Conservatives have a well-oiled machinery which raises more money, more funds than the Liberals can ever do. And they have held this advantage since the last election, drawing in 68.4 million in the first 2 years of Trudeau government. While although being in power, although being the givers of favors, the Liberals could collect 52.5 million only. So they did not want to lose, and they thought, okay, let's go the other way around and bring in. Now, when the next year election comes, as per this bill, the political ads could start rolling in about June 2019 rather than wait till October. Now, there's another thing. Bill 76 also introduces spending cap on partisan political advertising by the parties in the pre-election period beginning June 30. The government estimates the cap will be approximately 1.5 million for 2019 election, and which are to be held on the third Monday of October every 4 years. So a 50-day period could start at the beginning of September 2019 for the next year. This means that the pre-election period will be at least 2 months long. And as I said earlier, the bill to rejig the electoral system, they call it a modernization bill. I call it a bill to rejig the system. It makes wide-changing laws the Canadian election laws, and it brings federal parties under the federal privacy legislation, which was promised and was in fact a unanimous recommendation of Liberals, Conservatives, and NDPs, but the government hasn't accepted it. It was also recommended by the Federal Privacy Commissioner, but the government again has not accepted it. Why? As a matter of fact, all the federal parties should be brought under the privacy laws, and all 3 members of the ethics committee see how the data is being breached, and that ultimately leads to the privacy breach. It also attempts to crack down on advertising by the foreign interest groups. Now, this is important. Last year, the foreign interest groups had done a lot of work in favor of Trudeau. And as a matter of fact, if you remember, I had discussed it, that while America is convulsing with rage at the supposed, alleged, not proven Russian interference, it was Obama's party which was interfering in Canadian elections. And even this year, we saw in-kind contribution when David Axelrod came and addressed the Liberal convention. Now, what does this act do and what it does not? I'd like to let you know. A, what it does. It requires the political parties to share their privacy policies with the Election Canada and also make clear how the information is being collected, used, and protected. The second part is it increases the amount of child care expense during the campaign, for which the qualifying candidates can be reimbursed. Earlier it was 60%, now it will be 90%. Thirdly, it caps the length of the election period to 50 days. And it removes the pro rata increase to the party spending for each day beyond 37 days. So that limit has been removed. It allows voter ID cards to be accepted as a valid identification on the polling station. It increases the numbers of the hours advanced polling station stays open to 12. Interestingly, it allows all Canadian citizens residing abroad permanently to vote. Now, this is a very contentious thing. A person who has moved permanently but retains the passport and has otherwise no interest in the country should not be entitled to vote, but they are permitting him to vote. Allows people with disability to vote at home. And the foreign entities can spend zero amount to influence the elections, which is welcome. It bars organizations that sell advertising space to knowingly accept political ads from foreign entities. Now, knowingly accept. Knowing is something which can never be proved. And here is the problem. What happened in USA can come. The way political ads on Facebook were monitored and manipulated can easily be done because you can never prove it. So that has somehow to be removed. And why? Why should they be permitted at all? Secondly, it creates a pre-writ period beginning on June 30 with a cap on partisan political ad spending by the political parties and third-party organizations. So this is what the bill does. But it doesn't do three major things. And that is what I think shows the lexical attitude of the government. It fails to create the promised independent commissioner to organize TV campaign debates between the party leaders. It should have done. It requires political parties to show receipts of the expense they claim reimbursement. From where are they getting the claim reimbursement? There's no receipt. Why should they not be asked to do it? It also fails to put political parties under the domain of the federal privacy legislation, which I said earlier is bad. So as a matter of fact, the whole bill is rejigging the system, and they have earlier assured the Liberal government that they are against omnibus bills, which were introduced by Prime Minister Harper. And now this bill is virtually a monster bill. You may not call it omnibus. It's a difference of nomenclature. The reality is it is a monster bill. And it modernizes, the government says, and I would label it politically incorrectly, manipulate and rejig the rules of engagement in future federal elections. The bill is 370-page long document. It reverses all the changes brought in by the previous conservative government, lifting the ban on elections. Canada initiated outreach activities to restore the practice of voting at the polls. It also allows the chief electoral officers to accept the voter identity as a valid form of ID. Now, there's another thing, which is running, and the third parties would also now face new reporting requirements, and it will cover a wide spread of political activities like canvassing, polling, and get out of vote effort. By any measure, this is a monster bill in size and also in substance. And yet, according to Prime Minister Trudeau, it's not an omnibus bill. The government may use its majority, to pass the bill. And it has sufficient clout to force the bill into parliamentary fast track to get it finished this fall, which is considered to be deadline for the next year election. But is it valid? What Liberals had objected earlier during 2015 campaign for using omnibus bills, they are using the same technique themselves. Have they forgotten the basic fact that what is sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander? Precisely the then third party Liberal Party pointed out and castigated Prime Minister Harper that he was using omnibus bills to prevent, and I read, to prevent Parliament from properly reviewing and debating the government's legislation, and it wanted to change the House standing orders to bring an end to this undemocratic practice. Now, what was undemocratic for the Conservatives suddenly becomes fully democratic, fully acceptable, and in consonance with the liberals' new morality. Why? Is this not an inappropriate attitude? If you remember last year, House Leader Bardish Chaggar had formally proposed to amend the House rules to give the Speaker the power to hold separate votes on the bills that meet the parameter as an omnibus status. So, any bill that seeks to repeal, amend, or enact more than one act should be voted separately. And then why are they not doing the same in this bill? This bill is amending 5 to 7 acts at different places, in different clauses. Why is it that they are keeping back and keeping shut about it? Under the definition laid out in the standing order, it does promote change in more than one act, and it's very hardly possible to argue that there is a connecting element. There is no connecting element at all. And another thing, this bill fails to meet the threshold process of the process nerd's personal law of thumb. That nerd's law of thumb is very clear that the honesty of a particular bill should be judged by seeing how many other acts are being affected. And even if divided into separate parts, each and every one of the new bills would fall under the jurisdiction of the Common Procedure Committee, which is responsible for reviewing all election-related legislation. The way the bill is drafted, the individual MPs might find themselves with distinctly mixed view on legislation. Quite possible they support one part and do not support the other. For example, I support voting, banning the third part, the foreign contribution, but I cannot permit the proven aspect of the foreigners releasing political ads. And there's nothing, not a single word that mentions anything about the activities of the organization like Cambridge Analytica, which played havoc in India and in USA. In a nutshell, the official process nerding ruling on the issue is, and I read, no, it's not an inappropriate use of omnibus legislation, but notwithstanding technicality, it probably would not be a bad idea for the Speaker to divide the bills for the purpose of standalone votes. Would the Speaker do it? Would the Prime Minister not be a stumbling block to this nerd process? I doubt it. But if we have to maintain the purity, the pristine beauty of our election system, then this bill needs to be passed with drastic cuts. Would the opposition be able to do it? This is $1 million question. And we will know the facts in fall when we know the exact picture of Bill C-76. Does it pave the way for the Liberal Party to manipulate election process, or does it make the process neater, cleaner, and better? Thank you.